Welcome to What Really Matters podcast, Everyday Spirituality with Karen Wyatt. Thanks for joining me here today. And it is Father's Day 2026. And I'm going to be telling you a story today called Roses for Tracey When Grief Grows Wings. And I have written a companion article to this particular episode on my Substack page called Soulcode. And that article is called We Need Another Word for Grief. And in that post, I'm talking about the fact that today is Father's Day. It is also the solstice as of very early in the morning today here where I live. And additionally, today is the anniversary of the death of my niece, Tracey, who died 9 years ago of breast cancer. So this is quite a confluence of events here on one day, Father's Day, where not only do I celebrate the fatherhood of my husband and my son and son-in-law, but I'm also grieving the death of my own father so many years ago, grieving the death of my niece, and it's also the solstice. So a rather poignant time with a lot of things happening. And the post on Substack is about that. And in this episode, I'm going to explain a little bit more about the story of my niece Tracey and my grief for Tracey and kind of how that played out in my life. It's better heard as a story that I tell than one that I write on paper. So that's why I just decided to do that here in this episode. So I will get into that. I wanted to also let you know, though, this reflection in this episode, it's part of a larger body of work that I'm creating around the many pathways through which we learn about what really matters. And there will be a link in the show notes for this episode where you can explore the emerging field guide that I'm creating there. This is, a work in process, so it's not nearly done yet, but you can take a look at the beginning pages and what I'm doing there if you're interested in it. So we'll move on to my story about Tracey, my niece Tracey. So it was 9 years ago today that I got the phone call that Tracey had died, and she had been dealing with breast cancer since she was in her 30s. She had a very long course with breast cancer and a lot of treatments. But Tracey also had a really difficult life. She'd endured a lot of trauma and suffering really throughout her life, some of which I was there for, involved in her life, but most of which I was off going to medical school, getting married, raising my own family. We didn't live in the same state. I wasn't really there for her. I didn't really help her through those times because there was so much distance between the two of us. And some of the time, I don't know if I was really even aware of what she was going through. But I was able to visit her in hospice a few months before she died, and we had a really wonderful visit together and a very long talk. I spent hours with her, but I knew I wanted to go back again, because there were things that still needed to be said, and I wanted to wait until a little bit later in the course of her illness before they were said, before we talked about them. And I was certain that I would be able to do that. I would be able to go back and see Tracey again. But that morning, the phone call came, and I just wasn't prepared for it. I wasn't prepared that she would have died already. I still thought that there was time. And isn't that the classic mistake so many of us make? We hear that all the time. I thought there would be more time. I should know better. I've worked in hospice. I've been with so many families and individuals at the end of life. I've seen this play out over and over and over again. I've seen family members feeling just what I felt, like surprised and shocked. Oh no, I didn't think it would happen this quickly. I thought I had time. So I was dealing with the regret of not having gone back for another visit to Tracey, and I had told her I would come, and yet I didn't. I didn't get there in time. And just feeling overwhelmed with sadness that day. And really a lot of guilt, a lot of guilt about the fact that I didn't show up for her. And even thinking back to so many times in her life when she could have used someone else who loved her and cared about her to be there for her, and I wasn't there for her. And so I was recalling all of that, and I decided to go for a walk. This is my usually what I do when I'm grieving or when I'm feeling lots of emotion. I go for a walk out in nature somewhere, and where we were living then in Colorado, I had a wonderful path along the Blue River, very beautiful, very calming, listening to the river. And it was one of my favorite places to be. So I went for a walk down by that river, and I spent much of it in self-recrimination, really just blaming myself for why I hadn't been a better aunt to Tracey, why I hadn't shown up for her earlier in her life. I hadn't been there enough. And then the ultimate letdown that I didn't go one more time before she died. So I was feeling, again, as I said, so much remorse and regret that was adding to the sadness of having Tracey die at such a young age, at just 47 years of age. I was walking along the path and crying and weeping and wondering what I could do, feeling the need for something. I needed to do something, some sort of ritual. I needed to do something. Because I had learned this, going through my father's death and my mother's death, I learned the power of doing rituals to help move through the grief. I'd also been on my whole trip through Italy where I dealt with grief and guilt over my father's death there and discovered how small rituals can make a big difference. So I was trying to decide what I might do to honor Tracey. And suddenly the river took a big curve ahead of me, and the path curved as well, and I followed it along. And as I turned that corner around the curve, there was a huge stand of wild roses that had just opened. They were just fresh in bloom, beautiful, vivid pink color blossoms, and a fragrance so sweet. I could smell the roses before I even saw them. And there were so many of them, all of them blooming simultaneously on both sides of the path. It was just beautiful. And this color of pink is actually Tracey's favorite color. Everything she had was in this very same color of pink that these roses were displaying that day. And it was just a beautiful sight to see the roses stretching along the path in front of me on both sides of the path, to smell their fragrance. And then at that very same time, rays of sunlight broke through the clouds that were overhead and began shining down on the path, on me, on all the roses, on the water next to us. And it was surreal and beautiful and profound. In that moment, I just stood there taking it all in, like, this is incredible. This beauty, it was touching my heart so much to see this scene unfolding before me. And the next thing that happened is I heard in my mind, I heard laughter, and it was the sound of Tracey laughing, her very distinctive laugh. I knew that it was her. And she laughed and laughed, and I suddenly started to laugh along with her. And I had this incredible feeling of lightness that came over me, like the weight of all of that remorse and regret that I had been carrying earlier on the walk lifted off of me. And I'm standing there in the sunlight, smelling the roses, looking at their beauty, hearing Tracey's laughter. And what became clear to me in my own mind was that Tracey's okay. Tracey is in the best place she's been for a very long time. And she's sending me a message through these roses and the sunshine and her laughter, not to worry. It's okay. All is well. And it was a stunning moment. I was shocked at how quickly all of that heavy weight of guilt left me. I was still feeling sad. I was still missing her. I was still wishing that I could have seen her again. But I had this unshakable sense that she's okay, that she understood, that she wasn't hurt because I hadn't been there. And in fact, when I spoke with my brother the next day, I found out that he and his ex-wife were with Tracey for the last few days nonstop around the clock before she died. They had incredible visits together and conversations, so much healing and forgiveness and reconciliation that took place between them. And I realized, had I been visiting at that time, I would have disrupted that entire scene that was unfolding. They didn't need me there. They needed to be there themselves, and they needed for that closeness and that reconnection to happen between them. And I understood, like, oh my goodness, this is what Tracey wanted. She told me when I was there, she wanted to find her way to forgiveness. That's why I wanted to go back. I wanted to talk to her another time about forgiveness, but she and her parents got there on their own. And it was stunning to hear that, and then to feel completely relieved by Tracey of the guilt that I'd been carrying for not going back to visit her again. So on that path, that day, surrounded by these incredible pink roses, I picked some of them for Tracey. I picked a little handful of them, a small bouquet for her, and carried the roses with their fragile little petals that very quickly started to fall off the stems as I picked them. And then all along the way, I kept seeing more and more wildflowers, different types of wildflowers, yellow, purple lupin, just beautiful flowers all along the road. I began to gather some of those as well until I had this lovely bouquet in my hands. And I knew I would carry out one of my favorite rituals that I've found to be very healing for me, which is to drop flowers into the water. And so I came to a place where there was a bridge crossing over the Blue River. And I went to the middle of the bridge and took the flowers, and I prayed to them. I said a prayer for Tracey. I spoke to Tracey, and I dropped the flowers one at a time with a special blessing with each flower, and I watched them hit the water and travel with the water. And it was so powerful and so beautiful. And I can't even describe to you how healing that particular ritual was on that day for Tracey. I didn't want it to end. I slowed way down and very gradually, slowly put the flowers in the water, and sometimes the individual petals of the roses into the water, and watched them float away, because it was just so lovely. And again, the whole day was just magical. And it's on a public path, but for some reason, no one else was around. It's like I was all alone in this incredible space as I was carrying out this ritual. And so that's what happened on the day that Tracey died, which again was the solstice that year as well. But I went back for her funeral. That's where I heard the amazing story of the reconciliation that had happened right before she died, which just made my heart sing. And I got so much reassurance that Tracey really is okay, that something really beautiful happened, and she had an ending to her life of pure love, the love that she was missing and needing for all the years before, the love that had not come to her earlier in her life, that she cried for and craved and wished for so much. All of it was there for her in her last few days of life, and it was just incredible to hear about that. So I continued grieving for Tracey over time, still working through grief over my father's suicide. And my father and mother both had been really helpful to Tracey when she was little. They partially raised her, spent much time with her, and gave her very much love. And she was devastated with the deaths of each one of my parents. That was a huge loss that she endured in her life, just as it was a huge loss for me as well. So over the years, I held my grief and carried my grief for Tracey, but along with it, I carried a certain joy as well. This joy that had come to me on that path by the Blue River, standing by the roses. And that's the reason that I say I wish there was another word for grief, because when I talk about grief around Tracey's death, I feel like it conveys the sadness aspect of what I have been feeling ever since she died. But it leaves out perhaps the joy that has been there as well. I've held both of those, sadness and joy, and it's been incredible and profound. And so I thought through what is there another word we could use besides grief to describe this? But the thing that came up was to call it grief with wings. And so I write more about that in the Soulcode post, but grief that can take flight, grief that can be light enough to get aloft and to fly. And that is really powerful to me, because the heavy, sorrowful, guilt-ridden grief that I carried for such a long time about my dad's death, that was a grief that pulls you under the water, pulls you down into the earth, and just does not let you go. It's a suffocating, stifling grief that entraps you, and that's what I had lived with for so many years. And then this experience in a single day with grief over Tracey's death, and the fact that the wings were there, the wings to bring lightness into the grieving process, it was amazing and it was beautiful. And I realized that over time, very gradually, very slowly, my grief over my father's death has gradually sprouted the tiniest little wings, gradually grown those wings as well. I'm gradually finding joy again, and finding love within the sorrow over my father's grief. So that process has been playing out in other parts of my life. But the next thing that happened, which is also to me somewhat miraculous, I ended up having to move full-time out of the mountains of Colorado, where I'd lived for such a long time, for 25 years, and had to move to sea level because I developed serious cardiopulmonary problems. I could not live there at that altitude anymore without suffering really serious health issues, which I was already going through. I had to move right away in order to get to sea level so that I could gradually recover. But I felt tremendous grief because I've grown up my whole life in the mountains. I love mountains. I love forests. And I am at home. My soul is so at home in the mountains, walking by streams and rivers and in trees, hugging trees, and walking through thick, dark forests, and just being with the land in the mountains and the wildlife there. And it was so much to lose all at once, to lose our home that I loved and cherished, the national forest land that was right outside our door, literally, all the hiking trails, my meditation path, my gardens, everything. To lose all of that instantly almost, to have to come and really figure out my life all over again at sea level. And so I'd been going through again grief over losing my place and losing where I felt comfortable and the place that felt right to me. And also, like, what a sense of betrayal in a way. The place that I love so much was killing me, literally, because of the altitude. very confusing to go through. So I spent several months here initially just trying to adapt to this brand new environment, completely different than being in the high mountains, being at sea level by the ocean, walking on sand, watching the waves wash up and wash out. And it was a little disorienting and disconcerting to be in such a very different place environmentally, though I loved it. Like, I rather quickly fell in love with the ocean. I definitely loved it and was in awe of the ocean and its splendor and grandeur. But I was still grieving so much over my beloved mountains and having to leave them behind, and not just the mountains themselves, but all the other things that got left there that I had to walk away from. And one morning, I got up and went for a walk out on the beach. And again, I was feeling sad. Like, I don't know if I will ever feel at home in this place spiritually. Like, I don't know if I will ever feel like I belong here. Like, this is my home. Will I be able to handle this grief and just adapt and be here and love being here and be content with it and stop just ruminating over everything I've lost and all the things that are not here that I used to have. So I was going for a walk along the beach, and suddenly the tide, a high wave, the tide washed up at my feet dozens of bright pink rose petals. And they were scattered in a line all down the beach. It's kind of a scalloped line that the tide makes when it recedes. It washes up in sort of a scalloped pattern, and a sinusoidal, I guess you would call it. And so the rose petals were arranged like a necklace in a way, stretched out on the beach, going all the way down the beach. Beautiful, bright, vivid pink rose petals, which it turns out were the same color as the wild roses that I'd seen that day when Tracey died. Now, oddly, on that day, I didn't even think about that fact. I saw these beautiful rose petals, and I didn't remember in the moment, like, oh yes, same color of roses as the ones that I put in the Blue River when I was in Colorado for Tracey. I didn't think of that on that day, but I recognized these petals. Someone put these in the ocean as part of a ritual. Someone dropped roses, maybe off a boat, maybe from a bridge, maybe from a shoreline somewhere else. And they've been traveling through the ocean, and they washed up for me right here, right now, this day. So I gathered these petals that were scattered around reverently. Some of them were pretty beat up and it looked like they'd been in the water for a while, but some of them were still in really good shape. I gathered them up just so gently and lovingly so that I wouldn't disturb them. And the whole time I was thinking about whoever put these in the water, I want you to know that I'm caring for them. I love them. I love that you did this. I'm taking care of them for you. I will be a steward of these flower petals for you. So I gathered them up very carefully, and I held them up to my heart, and I just said a prayer. To the person who scattered them. I don't know why. I don't know if you scattered them in joy because something wonderful had happened that you were celebrating. I don't know if you scattered them in grief and pain and loss, which I have done myself many times. I don't know for sure. But I am sending you all of my love and all of my light and all of my recognition for whatever you are experiencing right now. And may you know your flower petals have been found and loved, and the message that you sent in those petals has been received by my heart. So after I said that prayer, I arranged the petals. I stacked them up and kind of arranged them into a spiral on the beach, and I put them low enough where they would be near the water's edge as soon as the tide came up a little bit further. I knew the ocean would wash them away again, but that felt like the right thing to do, that I needed to return them to the ocean. They'd been brought to me for this miraculous little moment and ceremony, but I needed to return the petals to the ocean and allow the ocean to take them back again. And I did that. I walked away. I left the petals there. It was a way of honoring impermanence and walking away. Sometimes we have to leave behind things. And I recognized this is what happened in Colorado. I left behind so much. I just had to. I had to, or I might not have survived. And so I'm here now. I'm alive. I can breathe. My heart is beating. I'm feeling better and better each day. And all I can feel, all I should feel in this moment is pure gratitude. Look at this. I get to stay alive. I get to be here. And pure gratitude, pure love. And I just received this message of tremendous love. The ocean like reaching out and touching me saying, hey, guess what? You can do rituals here too. It's not just in your Blue River back in Colorado. I can receive your rituals. I can receive your pain and your grief. I'm here to help you with that. And so it wasn't until I sat down to create this project, the field guide for what really matters. And I was looking at some of the stories of interactions with nature that I've had in the past. And I remembered that day of the rose petals washing up on the beach and how profound that was. And I started writing about it. And that night in my sleep, suddenly I remembered the Blue River. I remembered Tracey's death. And this was just a few days ago that this happened, actually. And I remembered the pink rose petals going into the river. And then suddenly it was so powerful, like, oh, every river flows to the sea. The ocean is telling me it's not a separate body of water from the river that I love and felt close to. It's all one. The river flows to the sea. The ocean produces the rain that falls as rain or snow and fills the river again. And suddenly it was so clear to me, like, oh my goodness, it's the same thing. It's all one. And I've been connected the entire time. And all the time that I thought I should be grieving and I've lost something and I'm separated from my soul and from my heart and what means something to me by being here, that isn't true. That was an illusion of being separate. So I had this profound realization, decided we needed a new name. We needed to talk about grief with wings, because sometimes grief does have wings and it can carry us places. And got the inspiration I needed to keep working on my field guide for what really matters. And as I said, I'm going to leave a link for that in the show notes for this episode. It's not nearly complete yet, but you can see the beginning foundation and the structure of it if you'd like to look at it and see what I've done so far. If you want to take a look at it, and then I invite you to follow along with me, because I can almost guarantee you there will be more inspirations that are going to be showing up along the way that I'll probably put here on this podcast as I'm in the midst of creating this field guide. So I want to say to you that I hope that your grief will have wings and will take flight from you. I hope that you will find reminders from nature, from the universe, that everything is connected and that you're not really alone. You're not really separated, no matter what it feels like you've lost, who you've lost, what you've had to leave behind. Everything is still connected. It's all here. It's all here for you. And it's all part of your glorious, magnificent life. And I hope that in this moment today, on Father's Day, I know you may be grieving the loss or absence of your father, and my heart hurts with you. I guarantee you. I feel that pain as well. but may you find even the tiniest wings for your grief that can help you lift up a little bit and look out and see the horizon and see the glorious beauty all around. And may you find your own fragrant roses in the sunlight wherever you need them to be. So thank you for joining me here today. Happy solstice, and may you have a very blessed day today as we honor our fathers together. Bye-bye.